This morning, I moved in the House of Representatives a bill that would establish a Whistleblower Protection Authority. It was seconded by the member for Indi, Helen Haines, and later in the week in the Senate, a similar bill will be moved by Senator David Pocock, seconded by Senator Jacqui Lambie. All of my colleagues will have a chance to say a few words, as well as Professor AJ Brown from Griffith University, who would be Australia's eminent authority on whistleblower and whistleblowing. Now, I'll leave it to my colleagues to speak in any detail they wish about the operation of a Whistleblower Protection Authority. What I want to do is ever so quickly set the scene, both as a whistleblower myself over the Iraq War and the lies behind that war, and also someone who's become a lightning rod for whistleblowers, have dealt with countless whistleblowers over the years and given voice to many whistleblowers in the Parliament under parliamentary privilege. And I have learned that to blow the whistle in Australia is diabolically difficult. The political landscape is hostile, and we see that with the fact that the ATO whistleblower, Richard Boyle, is before the court, that the Afghanistan war crimes whistleblower, David McBride, is in jail, serving a 5-year, 8-month sentence. It's also a very hostile environment socially. For some reason in this country, whistleblowers are often maligned. They're seen as tall poppies. They're not team players. And frequently the response from some members of the community is as hostile as the political environment. The would-be whistleblower also has to navigate a very complex labyrinth of legislation. There is a Public Interest Disclosure Act for public sector whistleblowers. There is a relevant section in the Corporations Act for private sector whistleblowers. But both those sets of laws are complex and inadequate. And a whistleblower has no hope without support and advice to navigate safely through that space. There's also the practical stuff. When you speak up in this country, chances are you'll lose your job, you'll lose your income, you'll lose your friends. It can lead to relationship breakdowns, take a terrible emotional toll on you. And it's unsurprising that in this country, there are hundreds, maybe thousands of people who speak up every year, and you don't even know the names of most of them. They get no media coverage, and the day after they blow the whistle, everyone's moved on. They're left in a hole, and sadly, the suicide rate among whistleblowers is markedly higher than the baseline in the community. It's a tough gig, and we need to support them, and in fact celebrate them, and that's what the Whistleblower Protection Authority organisation would help do. I'll now flick to the seconder of the bill, my friend Helen Haines.
Thanks, Andrew. It's always a privilege to stand up in the Parliament beside the member for Clark, Andrew Wilkie, himself a brave whistleblower. We've been a double act on this in the House of Representatives for a long time now, because the crossbench have been firm that we don't have a full suite of integrity measures until we have solid whistleblower protection reform, and that the overarching mechanism to make sure that we protect these brave people like the well-known whistleblowers, McBride and Boyle, Caleri and others. But what about the people who blew the whistle on PwC, the people who blew the whistle on robo-debt, elder abuse in aged care? The list goes on, and the many who are out there now with information that they know they want to share, but it takes such courage, and at times more than courage, it takes a person's capacity to throw away everything else in order to do this. This is an ensemble cast today. We have our integrity and whistleblower protection expert, Professor AJ Brown from Griffith University, and our two senators, Pocock and Lambie, who will be taking this bill to the Senate, because we need both houses working together to put pressure on a government who have promised this reform. On the crossbench, we don't just come and illustrate a problem, we come with a remedy. And the Whistleblower Protection Authority, as outlined by Andrew, is a remedy to this long-term shocking problem. In addition to supporting the whistleblowers themselves and providing guidance through a complex set of laws, the Whistleblower Protection Authority can inform the government as well, and ensure that we have fit-for-purpose laws more broadly going into the future. I'm committed to continuing on this call for whistleblower reform and a whistleblower authority. We've been calling for it for decades. There's a ton of evidence that AJ and others will speak to, but I'm here today to continue the push. And as always, it's the crossbench that pushes whoever's in government to do the right thing.
I want to thank Andrew and Helen for their work on this for many years now. Parliament is failing whistleblowers. We're all failing whistleblowers. And you have to think what the difference could have been had there been a whistleblower protection agency when Jeannie Marie Blake raised concerns about robo-debt. How many lives that were destroyed could have been, that hurt could have been saved had there been someone that she could have gone to raise those concerns. We have Richard Boyle facing 46 years in prison for raising concerns, blowing the whistle on the ATO, and it was found out that he was correct, and yet we have a government that is prosecuting him. 30 years ago, the Senate recommended that we set up an independent body that was there to work with whistleblowers. 30 years later, we've seen nothing, and I thank the crossbench for bringing forward these bills in the lower house and the Senate to better protect whistleblowers.
For me personally, I'm really confused in why the major parties don't want to deal with corruption in this country. Wouldn't that be a leadership thing? Wouldn't you want to know what is going on, what is corrupting the country? No, not those major parties. That is the problem. I can tell you now, we would never, if it hadn't have been for the Royal Commissions, the ones they're speaking about, the Royal Commissions into aged care, into disabilities, into veterans, so they could come forward and actually tell their stories to those Royal Commissioners, we would never have anything done. Why does it take this country to have to run a Royal Commission to get the corruption out there amongst the Australian people to say this is what is going on? Why do we need to go to that extent? Why can't they just come forward when there is corruption going on in this country and tell us what is going on? The only people stopping this are your major parties. What are they so scared of? What are you so scared of? You know what? If we fixed up the majority of the corruption that was going on in this country, imagine how this would make this country great, absolutely great, and put everybody on their toes. But no, not these major parties. 10 years I have been standing up here begging for whistleblower laws along with these guys, and still no, just crickets from the major parties. And they say they've got leadership. Enough is enough. I'll say this, by God, I pray in the next election that the independents and the micros have that balance of power. Because I imagine that first week of sitting, you're going to see the best whistleblowers any country in this world has ever had. And they're going to be here in Australia. The only question left remaining is what is stopping those major parties? I'll tell you what, because they're up to the neck in this corruption. And that's what it comes down to. They're just covering their own butts. We'll make a much better country. We need corruption and we need it out there. And people need to know what's going on. And people need to be protected. We need to protect them. We need to protect them.
Thanks very much, Andrew. As Andrew said, my name's AJ Brown. I'm a Professor of Public Policy and Law at Griffith University and also the Chair of Transparency International Australia. And I'm here to congratulate Andrew Wilkie, Helen Haines, Senator Pocock, Senator Lambie on moving the Whistleblower Protection Authority Bill today. And I'm, as many of you are aware, this has been an issue a long time coming. This institutional reform, amongst the many things that need to be done to improve Australia's whistleblower protection laws and bring them back up to world-leading standard, this is the single biggest gap, to actually have an agency that will properly and fully enforce these laws and lift the burden from whistleblowers to have to fight to protect themselves for having done the right thing, and shift it back to the community to actually carry the burden for them in making sure that they're supported and don't have to suffer. I won't go into the detail of the bill. I'm just happy to say that many of you will be aware of the draft design principles for a Whistleblower Protection Authority that Transparency International Australia, Griffith University, and importantly the Human Rights Law Centre prepared and have given as submissions to all parties, including the current government, to help get us to this point. The great thing about this bill is that it shows in legislation what a Whistleblower Protection Authority would look like. It makes it that much less hard for everybody to latch on to what it would look like and get on with taking this proposal and hopefully, notwithstanding the concerns that Senator Lambie might have about the major parties, improve upon it, but showing how it can be done. It is a bit of a history repeating. It's a matter of history and of fact that crossbenchers independents very often do trigger these kind of reforms. Many elements of this bill are actually built on the Whistleblower Protection Commissioner proposal that was built into Helen Haines as the Australian Federal Integrity Commission bill, and indeed before that, originally into Cathy McGowan's National Integrity Commission bill in 2018. I won't ask you to put your hands up if you were around for that, but probably many of you were. And so that it's an example of the fact that it just takes some leadership. The good news is, I think, notwithstanding the sort of confusion that I think many people share with Senator Lambie about where the major parties stand on this, the good thing is that both major parties have a strong record at different times of really backing meaningful reform. It was the Labor Party that introduced the Public Interest Disclosure Act with a bit of pressure back in 2013. It was the Coalition that introduced the current private sector whistleblower protections in the Corporations Act under the Morrison government in 2019, which are better than the protections in the Public Sector Public Interest Disclosure Act. The key thing is that although the clock has now ticked out effectively on this Parliament, the next Parliament is the Parliament that can really do this job properly. The time is right for all the review effort that's been going into reviewing the public sector whistleblowing laws under the Attorney General and the timeliness of the review that the government must do and is embarking on for the private sector whistleblowing laws to be brought together. So the time is right for this to be priority one for filling the single biggest gap in Australia's integrity system in the next Parliament. So I think it's, and we think, and I think many Australians think, that it's very good news that we now have a very tangible proposal in legislative form to show what this would look like, what it could mean, and from here on in, everybody can just improve upon it so that we achieve that vision that Senator Lambie was talking about. Thank you very much.
Thanks, AJ. Okay, we'll go to questions. First of all, on the Whistleblower Protection Authority. Yeah, look, I'll reduce it to a very simple explanation. In essence, it would be an independent government agency that would be there to, as a point of contact for whistleblowers and would-be whistleblowers, that people could go to and get advice, including legal advice, and the authority would then shepherd that person through the whistleblowing process, would ensure that the whistleblowers' legal protections are enforced. It would also be there to give policy advice to governments. It would be there to help mentor government agencies and departments on how they can better implement the protections for whistleblowers. It really would be a whistleblower one-stop shop. It would have enforcement powers. In the first instance, it would hopefully be able to bring people together to talk through an issue and ensure that the whistleblower is protected and is able to speak up about misconduct. But if those protections are not being provided to the whistleblower, the authority would have the right in law to require enforceable undertakings by organisations, to even refer the matter to government agencies, even to refer the matter to a court. So it would be a very powerful organisation. Any other questions on whistleblowing? I would close by saying the NAC does not solve the problem. Okay? For this country to have integrity, for governance to have integrity, you need to encourage and celebrate people to speak up when they see misconduct. You then need media freedom laws to give the media the legal right to publicise those concerns if necessary. You need the NAC as well, but the NAC in itself is in some ways the end of the process, not the start of the process. I notice the Senate bells are ringing. Does anyone have any questions, particularly for the senators, before they have to race off on other matters? The what suggestion? Oh, look, I'll be very, very critical of any suggestion that the next government does wholesale cuts to the Australian Public Service. One of the commendable things that this government has done is to restore the numbers in organisations like the NDIA, in DVA, in Services Australia, to restore jobs that were cut by the previous Conservative government, which is the reason we had such poor service outcomes by the previous Conservative government. One of the reasons that veterans in particular have been under such enormous pressure and feeling such great pain over the last handful of years was DVA, and this is just an example, was gutted. No wonder there were tens of thousands of DVA claims queued up, and veterans were taking years and years and years to get an application processed and for them to get the support they needed. It was for a range of reasons, and one of the main reasons was the previous government gutted these organisations. So I will not be in the next parliament party to any moves to implement the sort of wholesale cuts that are now being discussed and do seem to be Peter Dutton's intention.
I've had discussions with Mr. Farrell, had a briefing from the department on Thursday, which just confirmed how much of a stitch-up this reform is. The loophole upon loophole for the major party that's been designed into this. We know the government is fishing for amendments to raise the disclosure threshold, to raise the donation cap, which is what the Liberals, what the coalition want, to be able to pass it. And so I think they are fishing, trying to get the crossbench to bite so they can say, well, we consulted with the crossbench, we supported some of their amendments for what is just a total sham of a bill. No, they haven't. They haven't. And all the talk of consultation has not been genuine consultation.
All right, we'll wind it up. I know we've got another media event about to start with Rebecca Jacqui and me talking about gambling. Thanks, everyone.